everyone. Welcome to our last Crowdsource Coffee of the year. Woo!
Woohoo!
This is a space where we explore topics that support the well being and growth of education leaders. I'm Ling Dang. I'm here with some of my amazingly wonderful colleagues to talk about identity, values, and what really grounds us. But before we begin, I have to ask what's in everyone's cup today?
I'll start us out. Over the last few crowdsources, I was the health conscious one with like water or like green juice. But today, your girl has coffee. It's
Nice.
actually ashwagandha coffee. So a little to keep my mental nice and calm as I go through the day in my nice Bahamas cup. So that's what I have.
I'll go next. I've got a Portico cup of just house drip coffee with honey because I've talked myself into thinking that's more healthy than sugar or some other sweetener. So that's what I have.
I only put honey in my coffee too.
Do you? Nice.
I have house coffee, and as my creamer, I'm gonna call it a mocha, but it's really my daughter's abandoned hot chocolate. So that's what I'm drinking today. It's
Nice.
not intentional, but it's still actually pretty good.
My partner loves that. In the wintertime, he gets like those hot chocolate mixes and then pours coffee in it and milk or espresso and milk, and that's what he takes to work in the mornings. I'm going to keep it consistent. I'm on my iced lavender latte. For our last one, got to keep it the same. So, today's topic is about identity and values. I've been really exploring this topic lately due to the climate, the political climate, and thinking about what really grounds us. And my biggest thing that grounds me is my values and my belief systems. It drives my intentions, my actions, my decisions, and it really is a thing that I hold true to. And I think I really hold true to it because of the heaviness that is going around in our climate. And I know that these things not only affect us personally, but professionally as well. So, as we think about who we are and what we value, what are some of you all's strengths or skills that really shape who you all are?
I can go first. I think my personal kind of values and strengths would be kindness, creativity, being adaptable into a lot of different situations. I really try to come into every situation thinking, how can I support the people that I'm with? And then also, probably one of my big ones is a willingness to be vulnerable. I'm not afraid to admit when I don't know what I'm talking about or I've made a mistake or that kind of thing. And I found for me, people can relate to that and go, oh, yeah. Or they just say, you're really horrible. No, I haven't had too much of that. But for the most part, it's been a good thing for me to build relationships with people because they see themselves in some of my foibles, if you want to call them.
Curiosity is probably what I'm most known for, but also persistence and just I really love collaborating with a team. I love our team. I love doing work with folks who think differently than me. And I think it all blends together like that. Collaboration satisfies my curiosity in a way, and it allows that persistence to actually be successful. Those are some of the ones that stand out for me.
My strengths or skills, I would say, is integrity, authenticity, creativity, and I'm going to add one more. I want to say resilience. I show up as I am, who I am fully. I also stand on what I believe. If I'm rigid about anything, it's about what I believe. And I be sure to, stand strong behind that. And then I'm a creative, so I get creative in everything that I do. And I think that over the course of my life, I have grown to be very resilient. If something doesn't work one time, what do they say? Knock you down 10 times, I get up 11. And I'm gonna try again until maybe I really realize it's not really aligned or whatever. But I would think that those are the strengths and skills that really shape me.
Alexa, I really relate to your comment about that belief system and really standing strong in that. And the thing that I was curious about was in thinking about our political climate and the heaviness that's been really going on, has any of that changed recently? If so, how? And if not, why not? I think for me, because my belief system is so strong, I'll use the word strong instead of maybe stubborn, but I'm a little stubborn at the same time. So I find that I've had to step away from conversations or maybe even relationships because my values drive who I believe I should be and how the world should operate. So I've had to make some shifts both professionally and personally to better align with my values and my beliefs. What about you all?
I'll say that it definitely hasn't changed. Um, in fact, it's only emboldened me to remain in integrity and authenticity. So, no, because I feel like now's not the time to fold or bend what I believe is right, especially being myself when there are many institutions or systems that prior to this time, and especially in this time, don't want someone like me to be in the space. But I'm going to be there anyways. So, no, I think it just made me further dig my heels in the ground and be like, okay, what's up?
I think for me, it hasn't really changed a whole lot, except I think I've had to focus in harder on my value of being kind. Sometimes easy to get distracted by all the noise and forget that everyone has a story and everyone has a path that they've been on that has led them to where they are. I've had to, at times, learn to give grace to people that are having their own story and it doesn't maybe align with my story, but I mean, I think that can be said about everybody. And so it's just trying to keep conversations open with people whose values don't align with mine, or who I want to say, what are you thinking? I just feel like I have to really focus in on how can I be kind, and how can I have compassion for someone who's in a different situation than me, and what can I do to be, again, be a help to them, to you know be a support for them. So
Yeah, I think for me, similar, like not a lot of change. What I do believe is when there are new challenges, it's a time that you can lean on the strengths you have. And that can help you get through a challenge. And sometimes it's using those strengths to develop maybe a weak area. For me, like courageous, challenging conversations are not a strength. And so it's using those skills that I have of sticking with things, even if they're hard, to do something that isn't my natural, most comfortable thing. So I think that you can be building new skills using the ones that are natural for you, because some moments call for certain skills that might not be, everyone might not be my first skill, but I can still get there if I maybe take the long route through something that I do bring to the table.
When you were talking about kindness and really leaning into that, I had some time recently to shadow Carla, who's an assistant principal at my local high school. She is extroverted and bubbly, and she knows everyone and everyone's story. I got there super early, so it was really great to be there before the students got there. But then, the moment she stepped out the door, she has 15 people stopping her and talking to her because that's the life of a school leader, right? And as she's interacting with the teachers, with the staff, with the students, even if she's in the middle of a conversation, she's saying, "Hi, good morning," just quickly, and she knows everyone's name, she knows everyone's story, and she's just so warm and welcoming with just everyone. The way that she shows up is not by accident. She does this purposefully, and you can tell that this is something that she values, not just from conversations that I've had with her about connection and belonging with students, but this is something that she holds true to who she is. Relationships and being there and supporting one another is something that is extremely important to her. And so when you see someone show up like that, what does that make you think of in terms of your own strengths and what defines you all?
that kind of reminds me of, it was probably, gosh, it's been I don't know, 15 or no, more than 15 years ago, that Matt Coleman, our CEO, was a principal at a local school here, Westview High School. And I remember meeting with him over some graphic design stuff before we worked together this way. It was just really weird. His setup at his school was such that his office had a window to the hallway. Students were passing and kids would wave at him, and his office was set up to be like an open space. And for me, it inspired me partly to go, oh, that's someone I want to work with. That's someone I like to connect myself to, someone who treats people like that. And like you said, walking down the hall, every kid said, "Hi, Mr. Coleman." And it was one of those things where I had never really had a principal like that before. And it just inspired me that adults can really engage with students in a way that where they feel at ease and they feel comfortable and they feel just they can be themselves with him. Um, I don't know. I'm kind of going all over the place, but for me, it was an inspiring thing to say, that's the way I want to treat people. That's the way I want to be with people in public. I want to be an open book with them. So I guess the short answer is it inspires me to do the same thing.
I love that.
I can follow up with that because when I see people operating in that way, I just think about, wow, look at how much capacity this person has to be able to engage with others on this level of I see you, I hear you, but then also be able to be thinking about systems and the problem that they're about to go solve, and then being able to be present in every single one of those moments where, for example, I'm sure Ling, you felt like she was present with you, talking to you, she's present, she's in there, then somebody says, she's present with that person. And that's always inspiring for me. Like, how can I increase my capacity for people to make them feel seen and heard and valued while they're in my presence, regardless of what I have going on. And that's not easy to do. I see my friends do that in their daily lives, like on just on an intimate level. And I'm like, geez, sometimes I just want to shut off. And that's okay too, to be able to have
hmm
a boundary, but to be able to have such a well of capacity is something that like I like aspire for. So that's what I think about. It's a characteristic I want to grow within myself.
I think there's a part of it, like I am not a naturally outgoing person. And so it is a very it's a practice that you can do, but you have to like think about it. You know, if you're not a naturally outgoing person, you can choose to show up that way, but you have to make that choice over and over again until it becomes like a real habit. Because some people just naturally, that's just how they are. That's who they are. Like you were saying, Ling, about Carla. But for some people, it's just what's needed in the moment. And then you have to find a way to get there. It's not just going to come naturally. It's going to be hard work, but it's worth doing if it's what you need to support the kids or your community.
Yes, I am not outgoing whatsoever. I like to be in my own home with my dog and my partner, and I like to turtle. Being able to lean on that strength is really important when that needs to be turned on. And I think about relationships that Carla built, and maybe part of it is because of her extrovertedness, but it's also just her deeply rooted sense of caring. And I really relate to that. I think naturally I am a caregiver. That is one of I think my biggest strengths. I also relationship building is my number one. I'm really good at that. Outside of the being able to remember people and things that are happening, I'm really lucky that is my strength and that is what I can lean on in order to get the work done. And I think that leans naturally into my next question for everyone is what strengths or identities show up in your work? I hope my school leaders know that I care about them and I'm here for them and I can support them in any way that I can. That my coaches feel that way. We hear it in surveys a lot that, if they need help, they get it immediately, that they can lean on us. And Michelle and I are been there to help support them and whenever we can, however we can. So, how do you all's identity or strengths show up in work that you do?
Most of my day to day is with coworkers at Inflection, and I would say my kind of strength of being a creative thinker. being adaptable really comes into play for graphic design. Just listening to what whoever I'm working with, what they're really trying to get at, what they're really trying to convey with whatever graphics I'm creating. So it's kind of a matter of listening and adapting. A lot of times I'll show something that I'm way off the mark, and one of you will go, "That's way off the mark." You'll say it nicer than that, but you'll give me some direction. And for me to not, I've known graphic designers that they're like, no, this is the way to do it. This is the way I'm not going to waver from this. And I feel like in my work, I really need to be able to go, okay, listen to what they're saying. How can I best convey them? Again, it's a matter of giving them what they need to succeed. And so that's my goal. It's not to make cool stuff look cool or whatever, but to really help communicate what they're trying to communicate. So for me, that's, and then I think it's the kindness part of it. Just I can work well with a team, and so that helps me be able to communicate, ask good questions, be a listener, and that kind of thing. So I think for me, that's it.
I'm gonna jump in on that because you started that out by saying you don't work with our school leaders that much, but you don't get to be that person who experiences people reacting to your work always. And the work that you do is so amazing in how it grounds the identity of the people you are working with in the design and creates that opportunity for their values and beliefs and purpose to show up and shine in what they do. And it just, that it to me, that is so beautifully done and everyone sees it and it shows up in your, it glows from your work. It is
Oh,
who you are. And so that is so visible to everyone we work with. Even if you don't get to be the one who hears that, it has such an effect on everything we do. That's how I see your strengths. And
well, thank you.
we wouldn't be the same without you.
Thank you. Has my video looks more red now. I don't know what the,
Are you blushing? Is that blushing?
yeah.
Sir?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'll just say
How do you follow something like that? No.
that.
I'm in total agreement about what Michelle said for you, Kurt. It is really nice to see how you can take an idea and turn it into a visual for people to understand, especially complex topics and frameworks and ideologies. Being able to see it visually is really helpful. It helps me on what I do on my end. And so I would say the strength slash identity that shows up for me in work, specifically, I would say my authenticity because being the project manager slash instructional designer for a lot of the workshops that we do, me showing up in my space as I am, I think allows people to become comfortable and bring down the wall that sometimes is brought to academic spaces or planning spaces and allows them to feel like, oh, we can get creative, we can be fun. It doesn't have to be so rigid in order to teach a subject. So me kind of coming in playfully and thinking outside the box, that's the creativity helps, I believe, helps other people do the same. And I would also say resilience shows up because sometimes I put together something that I think is awesome and it gets torn up and it's nope, I don't nope, nope. And it's okay, I just spent 2 days doing this and now nothing is being used. It can be like defeating, but it's okay. My job isn't to be the person who is right about how something is presented. My job is to support the facilitation of learning. And so if somebody else comes in and switches it up, all right, sweet. That's what you want. Let's get it in there and put it in a way that people can understand it and ingest it and then move forward with it. I think resilience shows up there because it's about what the collective thinks. And let's get back up, get back in that slide deck and reframe it, rework it so that everybody is on the same page. So I believe that's how it shows up for me.
So, Kurt, one of the things that you had said kind of sparked something for me in thinking about giving people what they need and when they need it, and how to kind of build skills around that. So when I got to tour my local high school, there's a maker space, which was super cool. The teacher was, of course, outgoing and extroverted as well. And she was like, "Hi, let me show you around this place." And she showed me like the robot that they had. She showed me the 3D printers and some of the other machines that I don't know the names of. Like there was engraving and like a big cricket and things like that. It was super cool to see some of the work that the students are making and that they're using in their own schools, that they're using to put on the walls and the floors. It was really cool. And there's one student that she really bragged about, and she had a whole folder with his projects that he had been working on. They bought these really cool 3D printers that had, like, of course, multiple different filaments and could do all this work. And it really sparked something in this student. They asked their parents for a 3D printer for Christmas, and their parents got them a 3D printer. And first of all, super cool to see that they're learning something in school. It becomes a passion project for them. And it becomes more than that for them. The students started designing light boxes, and some of the ones that I saw were like of the school logo, but some of it was other colleges' logo. And you put a light inside of it, and it shines, and it lights up the whatever it is that this person has 3D printed. In Pittsburgh, we have this tradition for weddings called a cookie table. So the family members of the people who are getting married, they bake cookies, and so there's literally a table just full of a variety of cookies. And so the student printed out one of the bridges, and you can use that to display the cookies for cookie tables. And they're selling these things on Etsy now. They're making money off of the things that they learned in school and they found a passion project from. Granted, they can't sell the things that they make at the school, but they're using the school as a platform to trial and error things on the 3D printer and then go home and take the completed project, make them at home, and then sell them. Like they're becoming entrepreneurs and business people from the things that they're learning from school and in the space. And that's just one example, right? I'm curious, how do you see school leaders creating spaces for students like Darcy and Burl did, for students to really lean into what they're curious about, what skills they want to develop, and what they're really good at?
That sounds amazing. Very intentionally, and I think it's wonderful. Shout out to that teacher in the school. And to piggyback off of that, we have been doing interviews with school districts that are part of redesign or the community schools program. And something that I particularly enjoy learning about is how school leaders are using curriculum to help students lean into who they are and what they're good at. I don't remember the name of the school, forgive me, but they use from elementary school all the way to high school this thing called a RACIC, where they decide, oh, I'm into this, and this shows this part of my personality and this, and then they match them up with people who are in that profession, or they bring them in so the kids can see, and it's like these kids have the opportunity to be like, oh, I think I want to do architectural design. And it's, geez, when I was in middle school and high school, I had no clue what any of these different kinds of careers were. So they've intentionally made a space for students to think about what they're good at from young so that when they get to the time they're seniors, they've explored all these different careers or interests. And then by the time they're seniors, like, okay, I have all these different options that I can go to. If this one doesn't work out, I also know I'm interested in this. And I've done a mentorship with that. And I've done something with this. And it's like you get, they've been able to get this whole robust educational experience based on what they like and what they're good at. And I think it's really cool how school leaders can be intentional systems thinkers to be able to integrate that into the classroom every day. So that's something that I've heard and I thought was cool.
What I really liked, what I heard about that was that they let them explore. They let them dabble in things to kind of figure that out. I often wonder what it would have been like if I was at a school that did that when I was a kid. But this question immediately made me think of our work with Valley High School. It's been a while now, but when we were at Valley High School in Santa Ana, I really was impressed by the way the school had invested in creating different paths that kids could take, just a really wide variety of paths that they could really immerse themselves in. Like one was like a cooking path and a mechanic path, building and graphic design and media, just a whole bunch of different paths that kids could take, and the way they integrated that with the other subjects. How does math work with graphic design? How does this work with that? And of course, I jumped on the graphic design one. You could tell, again, intentionality was the key to that. They really made it a place where kids could explore what they're interested in. And then they gave them kind of a vision for what you can do with that in the future. I think not just as something I like to do, but how can this transition into the workplace, or how do parts of this transition into a job, that kind of thing. I was very impressed by the way they had invested in that concept.
I had a little different experience of this, and I think I've probably shared this story before with some of you, but I was actually homeschooled. And so my mom was my school leader, but one of my fondest memories of that experience was this annual meeting that she would have with my brother and I. It was very structured with this big blackboard on the wall. And she would just ask us like everything that we were curious about or interested in that moment in time, from like the time I was first grade on. It was just our annual conversation. And we would make this list of just anything we had read about in a book or things that we were interested in. And she would turn it into the things that we learned about that were connected to what we needed to be doing for our grade at that time. So, like, one of the ones that I remember is one year my brother was really into history and wanted to learn about Latin and Greek and all these different things. And so we did a combination where we were doing a lot of, I wanted to learn about wildcrafting and foraging and eating plants in our farm. And so we did this like Latin study of all the plant names and where the words came from and how they turned into plants. And then we gathered plants, and then we ended up doing the Master Gardener series through the Oregon State University. And it was just one of those things where we just put out our curiosity and our interests, and she made the connections to the learning and the curriculum and the standards. And we got to have the experience of coming along being like, oh, that thing that I wanted to know about. And you get the learning through your interests that way, even though you're still at the end of the day, like you're coming out of it with Latin roots, and that helps with all sorts of things, but you get to do it in a way that's fun and engaging and a topic that's interesting. The more I watch my daughter go through school, the more I am impressed by the way that my mom found to make it really fun and interesting for us to still have rigorous curriculum, but also learn things that we cared about.
I wonder how much of that shaped, because you talked about one of your strengths and your identity being curiosity. I wonder how much of not just that meeting, that annual meeting, because that's once a year, but how much of that continuous, like, where you're curious about this and it just gets reinforced throughout your childhood, just naturally was you, but also got reinforced as part of your identity and who you are as a person.
Yeah. Finding the joy in it makes it something that you continue doing. I think for
Yeah.
anything you do, once you find joy there, then you can continue to do it more.
Yeah. That actually leads me very well into our closer today. If we were in education intentional about creating space and moments where we could help students identify areas that are of curiosity to them, that they are interested in, that they might want to explore more, how much of that could shape who they are and their own identity and their own values and their own beliefs, and how much of that would be done at an earlier time, at such a fundamental time in their growth too, right? Where they're not leaving the school district at 18 or 17 or whatever age they are at to then try to figure out a career. But at an earlier age, Alexa, you talked about that survey, they're in middle school and they're like, I want to do architecture. I'm sorry. That's amazing to be able to start giving them those opportunities early. So, in thinking about that, what is one small way you can stay grounded in what matters most to you all? My values, I've said, and my belief system are what is most important to me. And one of the things that I value a lot are my students that I worked with in the past who were adjudicated youth. They are the ones that always come to the forefront of my mind when doing the work that I'm doing. And I want to make sure that though they are not with me, I still carry their voices with me. So, how can I best serve them? So, making sure that when I'm doing whatever work that I'm doing, and whether it's professional or personal, that their voices are represented in the conversations that I'm having.
I think for me, one thing I would say is kind of start every day in reflection on what you want to accomplish that day. Because it's easy to just get in a grind where you're like, okay, I'm going to work, I'm doing this, and I've got all this stuff on my calendar today. But I've found that kind of like taking some time in the morning to say, what do I want to accomplish today? Who can I help? Who can I make their life better today? You kind of set the tone for the day, for your path, for the direction that you want to go. And I found that helps me stay grounded in what's important and not getting sidelined by kind of the term tyranny of the urgent stuff that comes up and just demands your attention and sets you on a different path, which that happens to everyone. But I think if you start your
Yeah.
day in a reflective mode, that can help.
Very similar for me, Kurt. I have a very quick reaction time to when something happens, which is great in a first aid emergency, but not always great if it's something that is a little bit less of an emergency and more just that urgent. And so for me, anytime I get that email or text message or just deadline or meeting, rather than jumping right into it, just having a pause and letting myself remember what I'm trying to do, how things fit together so that I can approach that maybe urgent situation with my values, with my purpose, with everything that I know about what we need to accomplish rather than just solving something. Because it's so very easy to feel like an emergency needs to be handled. And sometimes there's a bigger picture that it needs to be connected to. And that takes that kind of reflection time and that pause to really do well.
Those are some really great answers. For me, I would say just authenticity rules. Just keep showing up as myself. I recently moved and was going through some of my old things, and I stumbled upon all these cards that my students made when I left. And what rings true in every single one of them is that they said, "We love how you just showed up as yourself. You walked in the hallways and your energy filled the room. You showing up as yourself made me comfortable showing up as myself. Or you made sure that our voices were heard." And so I just feel like the first step for me in staying grounded is showing up as me and not trying to be what the world thinks a teacher should be or a project manager should be or a creative should be. It's just no, it's me. And that's where the sauce lies. So that's a little thing I can do.
I love that. Well, thank
Mhm.
you all for joining us for our last Crowdsource Coffee of the Year. And to end this, cheers.
Cheers.